Hello, hello. I'm Casey.
And I'm Fallon.
And this is
Render the Darkness.
Ooh. New background. Sort of. It's still a blank canvas, but it's a different color.
We're working on it. We will get stuff out
We're
there.
getting there. Patience. Alright, you ready for your fun fact?
Yep.
You want to tell us where we're at so my fun fact makes sense?
Not at all.
Alright. I'm going to tell you. I'm just going to tell you my fun fact then. Fun fact. Michigan is the only state with 2 peninsulas.
Oh.
It also boasts the longest freshwater coastline in the U.S.
Oh, nice.
And it touches 4 of the 5 Great Lakes.
Oh. I was going to say something, but I won't.
Sounds like you said it to me.
No.
You said you were going to say something. You said something.
Okay, so as you are aware, I'm sure after that fun little fact there, that this is one of our 50-state series, and we are coming out of Michigan.
What?
Yeah.
Shocking.
Right. Now we're going to be talking about some ghosts that have been seen quite often through the years. Now, our first one we're going to talk about is about Miss Mary McNaughton, or Little Mary.
That's a tongue twister.
Yeah. Mary was born on September 5th, 1884, in Michigan to Robert and Elizabeth in Jackson County. Her grandfather was Moses McNaughton and was a doctor, the mayor, a real estate developer, and throughout his life he was also a railroad entrepreneur.
My gosh. Yeah. That was an accomplished feller.
He created many of the areas in Jackson and Rise Junction, and it didn't take long for the money to start rolling in. In 1838, he got married to Mary Turner, and the couple had 4 children, and they began building a huge mansion. In 1871, that would be finished in 1873. The mansion cost $70,000 to build, and in today's money, that would be around $1.89 million.
Fancy.
And it also had a underground tunnel system that a lot of people thought was part of the Underground Railroad. Now later the home was torn down to build a medical center.
What did they do with the tunnels?
Maybe they used them for, maybe they put the morgue down there?
Oh, I was just asking, were they part of the railroad system? Is that what they used them for?
I just thought that.
Alright.
Now what?
We're interested in the wrong parts of this case.
From what I found, some sources say that Mary was the only child, and some say that she had 3 sisters, Edith, Ruth, and Helen. But on Find a Grave, she's the only child listed, so I'm not quite sure on that. Now, it said that she left with her mother to avoid the diphtheria and typhoid fever plague in Jackson, and they went to Brighton in 1892. When she was there, she got sick with, hopefully I say this correctly, peritonitis, which is inflammation of the tissue surrounding the abdomen. Some people think that her appendix ruptured, causing the infection to spread. She was only 7 years old when she died on July 18th, 1892.
That's sad.
Now, she was taken back home and buried at the McNaughton Cemetery in Jackson County, Michigan. The cemetery where she was buried was one of the investments that her grandfather had made. The cemetery, now known as Hillcrest, has trails that go between the back part of the Elm Street Cemetery and Blake Woods, and that is where the family plot is located. However, there are no trespassing signs that are all over the area because in 1970 her grave was continuously vandalized. I don't know why somebody would do that, especially to a child. Some sources say I don't know what happened there. Some sources say that they actually moved her body but left her gravestone. But from what I've learned, some of the groundkeepers might take you back to see it. There's a monument at the family plot that Moses had brought in from Scotland to honor all of the McNaughton family. Now, after her death, her mother was extremely grief-stricken. Wow. It's one of them days, y'all. That's all I can say.
We call that day.
Hey. Most of the time. But after the family said their goodbyes, they all went home and went to bed. That night, Elizabeth had a terrible dream. The story goes that she was absolutely sure they had buried Mary while she was still alive. Now, her husband, wanting to ease her mind, had Mary's body exhumed to show his wife that she was deceased when they buried her. Then the lid to her casket was opened. They stood there staring in horror at the deep scratch marks on the lid.
Oh no.
Her face was frozen in the state of terror, and her hand was covered in blood, showing that she had desperately tried to escape.
Oh my gosh. That happened so often back then.
Yeah.
That's why they did the bells for a while.
Now, unfortunately, Elizabeth's nightmare was true, and they had buried their daughter alive, and she suffocated not long after she was lowered into the ground.
Oh my gosh.
Now, like she was saying, during that time period, it wasn't common for people to be buried while they were still alive. In 1896, a device was created to be put in coffins. That way, if someone woke up, they could pull a string which was attached to a bell or other means of letting someone know that they were in there. Now, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, you did an episode on people being buried alive.
I did.
If you haven't seen it, you should definitely check it out.
I did.
Now, the legend that surrounds Mary is that she has been seen floating above her grave, and some have heard scratching and screaming coming from the ground at her grave, too. Now, there's a story of someone going to her grave with some friends. They found her original grave and then went walking around. They were close to some flat headstones when they heard scratching from a flat grave marker. They looked all around and didn't see anything that could be causing the noise. Now, there is more to the story and some photos by John Robinson on the website 99.1 WFMK. If you'd like more details, I'll link that site in the show notes. So the next story we're going to talk about is called Dog Lady Island.
Okay.
Now, there are a few different versions of the story about the Dog Lady. Most of them talk about the island's history and different transitions. It was once a woman's religious school in the 1800s. Then it became the private island and home of the Kostler family. Hopefully I said that correctly. And they wanted to try and make a thriving estate, but they weren't able to. People would come to believe that it was the curse of the island. Nothing can last there. The island then went through the hands of many people hoping to make it thrive as well, but all that tried failed. And the most told story is that the last couple that owned the island had a bunch of dogs. Some sources say that they were Dobermans and some say that they were wild dogs. In 1961, the mansion burned down. The last living woman on the island was left to stay in one of the communal buildings that had been built. She was completely alone other than her pack of dogs. Another story is that her husband left her alone with the dogs and never returned. She was alone with those dogs for so long that she started acting like them, running on all fours, barking and growling. Another story talks about a woman who was told by her village to find her sacred vision. When she came back, she stayed for a while, but later took off with her dog. She finds a home that was abandoned and ended up mating with her dog and has children.
That's not a thing.
That's just the story.
That's not a thing.
Now, her village finds her and her dog hybrid family. They go back to the village and tell her brother. He goes back to where she is and kills her and her family.
Oh.
The village then abolishes human and animal marriage, but names those islands after the couple, but the islands are now known as North and South Fox Islands.
You know, before you got to that part of it, I was going to be like, oh, this would totally be me. No, it would not. We're just going to
Yeah, it got a little...
it went a little different direction than I was anticipating it was going to go.
Now, as for the sightings about the Dog Lady, there are some stories from quite a few people. In the later part of the 60s, the island became a party spot for teenagers. They would go there to build fires, drink, smoke, do other things. Now, sometimes people would see glowing eyes in the bushes close to their fires. Some would even get a chance to see her. They would say that she looked crazy, old, and her clothes were tattered, and there was always beside her a pack of dogs. Some claim that she would lunge at them growling. Now, there is a rumor that the woman had a phone and that some of the kids got her number and would call her only to get growling on the other end.
How this lady had a phone?
I don't know. That's just one of the sources said, so I was like, I'm going to throw it in there. But it actually turned out to be the phone number of an older woman that couldn't really say hello correctly.
Oh, that's fucked up.
It is. I'm
This
sorry.
poor lady.
I shouldn't laugh, but yeah, it's
That's messed up.
oh.
Sorry.
No, it's no. The last story I'll talk about from the dog lady starts off the same as the others, but in this one, her dogs turned on her one day and ripped her tongue out and partially blinded her. The woman at one point developed a habit of jumping onto people's cars. An article talks about a legend that claims a motorcycle gang killed her and took over the island and kept her body in a coffin. And her ghost can still be heard growling and grunting and even be seen eating off the ground.
That's a bizarre story.
That's what
Of all the haunting stories I've heard, that's probably in the top 5 most bizarre
I thought. Yeah, it was pretty weird.
ghost stories I've ever heard.
Alright, so this last one is kind of short, but I thought it was an interesting story, and it is about the ghost of Castle Park. Now, Castle Park is a private neighborhood that is south of Holland and is a major port city of Michigan. Michael Schwartz, who was originally from Chicago, hopefully I said that correctly, built a home at Castle Park to be able to have some rest and relaxation.
It's definitely Chicago.
The home he had built looked a lot like a castle from Germany that was in a town that he grew up in. The home had towers and a wall that looked like a battlement, which is like the squares that you see on top of the castles and the area in between them for like the soldiers to shoot from.
Yeah, Mario.
There you go. He was really hoping to be able to retire and enjoy family time in the very secluded area, and in 1890 the home was finished. Now their children didn't really want to stay at the house hanging out with their parents all day, so the home was pretty miserable for them. So eventually the family moved to Holland in 1892. Now there was a rumor going around after the family left the castle that there was a ghost that roamed around the property that could mainly be seen in the tower. One story is that one of Michael's daughters had a relationship with a man he didn't like. He didn't think he was good enough for his daughter. His daughter left with the man and eloped. One says that he was actually able to catch the couple before they were married and stop them. He took her back home and locked her in the tower, and she never seen her fiancé again. Now, the sightings of the ghosts are pretty much the same. Many people have seen a sad-looking woman in the tower of the castle. Some say that she is still waiting to be able to see her first love once again. Now, interesting fact about this castle is that the author L. Frank Baum had a summer house close to the area, and he said that the castle with the local yellow brick roads really inspired his representation of the Wicked Witch's castle in the Emerald City in The Wizard of Oz. So, if you haven't seen it, you should go check it out.
If you haven't seen The Wizard of Oz,
Castle.
oh, who hasn't seen The Wizard of Oz?
Yeah, the home, which, you know.
The castle makes more sense, yeah.
But, so that is my case on the ghosts of Michigan.
That's a very interesting story, which is really ironic because as you're reading that last one, I had like 5 or 6 different movies that could have inspired going around in my head.
Well, no Wizard of Oz. What's another one?
Like Tangled, or Rapunzel, like where she's in the tower, she like grows her hair really long, and she's like waiting for her first love.
Oh.
Like something like that.
Excuse me. Interesting.
I'm an interesting person.
Yeah. That's one way to put it.
But anyway, thank you very much for sharing your Ghosts of Michigan, which was part of our 50 states.
Yes.
Source.
We're getting there, y'all. We are almost halfway there.
We're a little over half. We're in the M's. We're in the mid-M's.
Yeah.
A little over half.
Excuse me.
We're getting there. But yeah, thanks for hanging out with us. For those of you who did, if you like what we do, please give us a like, a share, a follow, tell your friends,
Subscribe.
tell your enemies.
We appreciate it so much.
Yay. We're working on the background. We're working on improving and making things more better.
Yeah, we'll get there.
We are open to suggestions.
Yeah, I was gonna say if you have any suggestions,
Any at all.
as long as they're appropriate.
Yeah, please don't say things like we don't like your face.
I wasn't even going there. I was thinking about like inappropriate pictures.
If you don't like our face, we have audio only. Just so you know. But yeah. Other than that, thanks guys.
Bye.